Well, now I want to turn to Senior Chief Andy Zimmerman. Andy is the chairman of the NMRA Standards and Conformance Program, and also the superintendent, or not the superintendent, the president of the Sunshine Region. Andy, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Andy, can you talk to us a little bit about this NMRA Standards and Conformance Program? I mean, I've heard about it as long as I've been an NMRA member, but I don't really know a lot about it.
Well, so the whole reason why the NMRA got started was to have trains that would uniformly run on their different layouts in their respective scales, and they would all run together. So manufacturers were going off on their own little, tangents, and things weren't running together, and there was no uniformity. So they formed the NMRA to help develop those standards. And we've been doing it ever since. We've gone through numerous standards and conformance managers. And when I came on board, I saw the standards and conformance was it was a little dated. It was kind of like doing the same thing repetitively over and over again. And I reached out to a number of very enthusiastic volunteers and pulled them in. Excuse me, sorry. I spun up, five groups. We had the overall department is the Standards and Conformance Department, and then under the Standards and Conformance Department, I'm happy to say we have about 83 active personnel, all volunteers from all around the world. They do conformance and inspection. They do the DCC working group that handles all the DCC controls and DCC manufacturing measurements, that sort of thing, setting the standards for that. We have the mechanical group, we have an electrical group, and we have a modular standards group. All of them led by well-seasoned individuals. Again, very knowledgeable volunteers from all around the world. We got people that participate from Australia, Europe, England, Canada, United States. So from all over to help create these standards and maintain these standards. So what we've done over the past, I've only been the manager for about little over 2 years now. And what we've done is we're bringing each one of the written standards back into the spotlight, and we're starting right from the top. And I almost said scratch, but we're going back to the beginnings, the reason for that particular standard, why that standard exists, and why does it matter. So and as we roll through them, we're looking at production today, models today, trackage. We're looking at the old steam era stuff, and we're looking at the new, diesel era stuff, the modernizations that we have going on right now. And then we're producing those standards so that they meet, they help the manufacturers meet those specifications. So that when you get a replica of a SD40, SD40-2, that it's correct, and that it runs correctly on, N scale track or HO scale track, and it's not picking a switch, because the track has to meet standards and conformance. So it's not picking a switch because something's too wide or something's too narrow, and it's not jumping a switch, etc., causing shorts or anything else. So, and nobody wants to try to run their model railroad and then have to run it off excuses because, oh, well, that particular engine seems to do this or do that all the time. I'm sorry, let me get a different engine, whatever. So we work with the DCC manufacturers, with the actual manufacturers of the engines and the rolling stock themselves. We give them our specifications, and they take those specifications back, measure, they send us their product. We take a look at their product for the conformance and inspection side of the house. We look at their product and we make sure that it conforms to all the standards for HO, SO, the narrow gauge as well, and all the way, everything down to Z. So we don't have any T scale yet, but we have we have just about every other scale. So in T scale, it's like so.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we've been going through and we've been refreshing all the standards, cleaning them up, making them better to understand, giving the modelers more detail in the footnotes, so they know where we derive the data from. And we've been taking those standards and producing them in the NMRA magazine under a column called Why Standards Matter. And then when we produce it, we also put the person who wrote the article, a little bit about that person, about whether they're an engineer or electronics technician or a computer technician, whatever. We give the full history, and so they can see that these people are well qualified and they've been working hard and working diligently to bring you the best possible product. Because our work translates into what the manufacturers are doing. And and the other part of that is when the manufacturers ignore a standard, we bring that into the light too, and we give them a chance to fix it. And if they decide that they don't want to fix it, oh, too bad, so sad, we're going to leave it the way it is. Well, we used to not tell the members because we didn't want to put anything negative in there and piss off the manufacturers. But when I came on board, the input that I always got was, well, if the NMRA knew about it, why didn't they tell us? Maybe I wouldn't have bought I wouldn't have bought that product because it's not going to run well on my layout. So when I came on board, I had a sit down meeting with all my new department heads. And I said, we are going to be transparent and we're just going to tell the truth. And if it's ugly, it's ugly. So if it conforms and it gets a conformance warrant, perfect. If it doesn't, we gave them every opportunity to fix it. We'll be kind about it when we write it up. And sometimes it's something simple. It's like, everything about this hopper is conforms to standards except for the wheel sets. And we discovered that if you exchange the wheel sets with some intermountain wheel sets, it's in compliance, it's in conformance. So and we give the modelers options. So you may want to do that. So anyway,
Andy, you're probably the most knowledgeable person in the NMRA about standards and conformance and what the manufacturers are doing, what the modelers are saying, and so forth. You got to be hearing it from everybody.
We get it.
Let me ask you this: what's your main worry for the future with all the new technology coming on board and so forth, with the standards and conformance? What does the future look like for what you do, and what is your main concern?
So and to kind of fall back on what I was just talking about, this is why we're producing Why Standards Matter. Because the average modeler, when they come into the NMRA, they're like, oh, what has the NMRA ever done for me? Well, if they look at their layout and they were to see how smoothly it runs or how well it runs, that's what the NMRA has done for you. So so the big thing for me is if we don't continue to grow and continue to have members that will keep the NMRA growing, moving forward, and involved, the manufacturers will go off on, like they did back in the 30s. They're going to go off in their own to do their own thing, and then you're going to get an engine from scale trains that won't take a decoder from soundtracks, or you're going to get a you're going to get a locomotive that has TCS decoders in it, and you don't want that. You want an ESU decoder in it, and it won't work because there's too many alternative things on the motherboards of these engines, and the new decoder simply can't control everything. So my biggest concern is that we need the support from the model railroading community, and with that support, that translates into, well, are people going to buy our product? The NMRA has almost 18,000 people, and they're going to tell 18,000 people that this works or doesn't work. So, and we don't want that. We want that publicity, or we don't want that publicity based on their product. So it's kind of like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. We want to get ourselves into a position where when the NMRA speaks, people listen. And those people being the DCC manufacturers, the actual locomotive manufacturers, and some of these startup companies that are coming in now. So my biggest concern is that we're going to lose that. Go ahead.
How do you ensure you don't lose that? I mean, that's I've heard that people have been saying that's why the NMRA was started. That's why your trains run the way they are now. That's why you're a model railroader today without all the worries from the past.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep that interest? I mean, well, I don't know how to phrase it, but how do you keep that motivation, by members in the hobby?
Well, I try to talk about what it is that we do through sites like yours and other podcasts and other things, so that people understand that not just, because we're reaching out to people that are not necessarily NMRA members. So we got people on here that are, and people who are not NMRA members, and people who will spend the money or won't spend the money. So
right.
Matter of fact, when you look at exact numbers, or when you look at actual numbers, excuse me, if every modeler were to join the NMRA, it would be exponentially larger. So because there's so many modelers who are NMRA members. So my job is to kind of get keep everything running, keep it running smoothly, making sure that we're meeting the needs of our members and non-members, because obviously if we produce the standards, then even the non-members benefit. And we ensure that the manufacturers stay on target, and we bring the memberships and the modelers concerns to the manufacturers in our weekly meetings. We have a weekly meeting with the manufacturers, and we talk about what the members are talking about, what the modelers are talking about, what some of the concerns that we get emailed to us or sent to us, and we try to keep that interest up by keeping people informed. I would rather over communicate than under communicate. So
right.
One very very long thread on a popular site. They were talking about what could the NMRA do better, and a lot of people felt that we were not being transparent enough, and we weren't being engaging enough. So I took that to heart, and so we're being as transparent as we possibly can, and we're engaging as much as we can. And we're encouraging as many as we can. And I think people see that now, because we went from probably the low 60s in volunteers to 84 volunteers now. So, and we went from mediocre, half engaged people to some very actively engaged individuals who really just want to see this thing fly and make it work. So I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing. I'm encouraged by the growth. I'm encouraged by the quality of volunteers that we're getting.
Right.
So I think we're going to continue to see that growth. The last couple of years, as a matter of fact, this last year we saw positive growth in the NMRA. And as opposed to the years previously where we had, large losses of people, they pass away or they just get out and they don't do it anymore. And we would have some negative growth. People were still joining, but more people were leaving or dying off or getting out of the hobby than were joining. So we had negative growth. But this last year we had positive growth, and not only at the national level, but we had a 3% positive growth within the Sunshine region itself. So anyway, I see I'm out of time. So, but I don't want to be too verbose.
Listen, I look forward to.
I went over time last time. So if you want me to continue talking, I'm happy to do it. But I just want to.
No, not at all. Anybody have any questions for Andy while he's here right now, or about the conformance program that he's in charge of?
And if you think of something, I'm going to be back I told Jim I would come back on a regular basis to discuss anything you want to talk about. I mean, even if it's not standards of conformance, if it's something else with the NMRA that I might have some knowledge on, I will be happy to discuss. Yeah. If I don't know, I'll be happy to find you the answer.
So Andy, one question. It seems to be the next area of, I'll call it innovation, is in wireless. Right. So we've had some folks that have done wireless basically as a cab bus replacement, which are all proprietary. The standard is obviously on the track side. We've now had two different implementations, one using Bluetooth kind of as a power sucking alien, and for those from the industry interpretation, how you build things. We have one that's a Wi-Fi implementation. How do you see the NMRA and the industry addressing this? Because it seems to me we're kind of in that whole area where we were with, DCC and its predecessors 30 years ago, when there were 3 or 4 different options, and there's how do you converge on one standard for wireless direct communication to a decoder in a locomotive.
So I'm glad you asked that question. Thank you very much. I'm not trying to be political, but thank you very much for that question. So we have, like I said, we have some very knowledgeable individuals. Some of the individuals that we have that work for us are pioneers in building businesses, entrepreneurship. And when I say building business, I mean multi-million-dollar businesses that are engaging us and engaging with us to talk about what that looks like, what the wireless future looks like. So we actually have, and I don't want to let too much of the cat out of the bag, but they have developed a very specific white paper on how we should go about moving forward with wireless technologies in the future and what that would look like. So we've been talking about it for the past year. They have finally gotten to a point where they've gotten everything written up. They submitted it to the Standards and Conformance Department, and now my DCC and electrical teams are reviewing it. And we're going to bring him on to discuss it with the DCC team, which consists of manufacturers from all around, from many different companies. So it's nothing that they're going to just like drop in somebody's lab and say, "Hey, ESU, go run with this." But we're going to get the idea into their head and then try to shape and form the future of that wireless technology and what it would look like. So we've got something in development right now. If you give me a little time, Yeah, I can bring a little bit more of it to light for you after my team has reviewed it, and we reviewed it with the people who wrote the white paper on it. So, but it's out there, and they definitely saw that. They saw this coming, and they said, "Hey, we think this is the future. This is what do you think about this?" And they've got everybody's interest.
Andy, this
I
is
have a
something
question.
that when you come back at some point, I hope that you can talk about more about this specifically, because I do think that this is one of the real issues out there.
Well, we have, as a matter of fact, if this meeting had been a week later, I would have been able to talk about it. But my team just hasn't had a
And
chance.
maybe next time you're on, that we can continue this conversation.
Sure. No one.
Listen, I appreciate so much you being here tonight and sharing what you shared with us this evening.
I
And
think
look
John,
I have
forward
a
to
question.
seeing you next.
I think
Oh,
John
okay.
had a question.
Yes,
Okay.
and Andy, the recent issue of NMRA magazine covered traction
Right.
and traction modeler. And did you have anybody on your team who was a traction modeler?
We tried to pull a traction. We tried to find someone who was an actual traction modeler and modeled that specifically, and those are few and far between to come up with. So no, we didn't have it. And one of the responses that we gave was, we did the best we could with that standard, and then I did get one email, and we invited that person to come and help us redevelop it if it needed to be redeveloped. So if there's anything, and this is for everybody, if you see a standard that you're like, hey, wait, this hits some of the points but doesn't hit all the salient points, maybe we should add some things to it. Hey, I welcome you, even if you only join the team long enough to help us get us through that section, talk about that, streamline it, get it correct for all traction modelers, for instance, I would welcome it. So I know that
I'm a member. I'm in New Jersey, so I'm right outside of Philadelphia, and we have a club called East Penn Traction Club.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry that happened, because I could have put you in contact with some guys who are much better modelers than I am to help you out. And um, I just felt in reading the article, it was.
Now remember, when you read the article,
It was. I felt it was somebody who hasn't suffered through, and Jim could tell you because he's a traction modeler too. Suffered through all of the nonsense of the wires and the overhead and things like that. And
you were absolutely correct, because I think I
so
was one of
anyhow,
those.
that's my question.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say this, John. Send me your
John,
information.
John, let me encourage you to do this. Why don't you send an email? You can send it to me if you want to, or send it direct to Andy of how people that you think in East Penn would be interested and might really be able to assist John in the traction area. Because being a traction modeler, I definitely think somebody involved in traction, and really has gone through the ups and downs, as you say, would be beneficial on the committee if we could find somebody to serve. But at the same time, I understand what Andy's saying. We're few and far between, as you well know. So if you can recommend somebody from the East Penn to Andy, I think Andy might really appreciate that and might really be a benefit to all of us traction guys.
So, John, along with that, if it requires a rewrite or requires like some additions to be put into it, and I have to push it through the board and what have you, I am happy to do that. So, and like I said, from everybody's perspective here, whether you're an NMRA member or not, I'm looking for the best possible output. So I want quality output. I don't need quantity, I need quality. So I think if you're talking about the standard I think you're talking about, it was myself and another modeler who had done very little of it. We've had some. So we defaulted to explaining why that standard mattered, as opposed to how it actually operates and how, how the curves, like going around a curve. Yeah, one of the things that was discussed was, trying to get the pantographs to ride along, along the wiring around a curve, and not hang up, catch, or, break off or what have you. So, so we didn't take it from the perspective of how it runs as much as why it mattered. So,
Gotcha.
but
John, as I say, you can send the email to me if you want to, or direct to Andy.
Yeah.
And and if you send it to me, I'll make sure Andy gets it. I'll forward it to him. But I do think if you could recommend somebody from East Bend, I think that would be fantastic.
And we freely admitted that we don't have enough knowledge in that area to make it the best quality product. And I will welcome anybody to jump in and work with us to get that done. So
Okay,
Fantastic.
thank you.
John, thanks so much. Yeah,
thanks, Sean.
appreciate it. Andy, thank you. I thank you so much. Look forward to you coming back. And when you come back, I hope you can talk to us about the wireless some more and see where we're going with that.